We're going to look at solving trig equations. Now, before we start solving trig equations, you've got to be familiar with this diagram that's here. This diagram shows 4 quadrants: quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Now, it's basically angles that go right the way around, anti-clockwise, round to 360 degrees. All the angles that lie in quadrant 1 lie between 0 and 90. They're acute angles. Angles in the second quadrant lie between 90 and 180. Angles in quadrant 3 lie between 180 and 270. And in quadrant 4, the angles lie between 270 and 360. In those quadrants, if you use your calculator, the answer you get on your calculator will be this acute angle. If you have an answer that's going to be in quadrant 2, then you have to do 180 minus the calculator answer. Likewise, quadrant 3, 180 plus the acute angle or calculator angle, and in quadrant 4, 360 degrees minus the acute angle. Now, the other wee chart that goes with this one is this one here. When you solve a trig equation, you usually have 2 options. So there's going to be an answer in 2 quadrants, and depending on whether the sine, the tan, or the cos is positive or negative, then they will lie in these quadrants. In quadrant 1, all trig ratios are positive. So sine is positive, cos is positive, and tan is positive. However, in quadrant 2, only sine is positive, cos is negative, and tan is negative. Now that's a lot to learn. So what we do is we just learn which ones are positive. So in quadrant 2, only sine is positive. In quadrant 3, tan is positive, which means that sine is negative and cos is negative. And in quadrant 4, only cos is positive, sine is negative, and tan is negative. So rather than having to learn all of those different facts, you just learn where are they positive. So they're all positive in quadrant 1, only sine is positive in quadrant 2, tan is positive in quadrant 3, and cos is positive in quadrant 4. Now, this diagram sometimes is referred to as the cast diagram, and that is just because it spells out C, A, S, and T. So sometimes I will talk about it as being the cast diagram. Right, we'll go on and we'll solve some equations just to let you see how those 2 charts work. First one we're going to solve is, we're going to solve the equation for sine x is equal to 0.5. So you take your calculator, and what we do is we want to work out the acute angle, and the acute angle is shift sine. Now the symbol for that is sine with a wee minus 1 of 0.5. Check your calculator is on degree mode. The answer is 30 degrees. Now at this point we're thinking of these 2 quadrants that I've just talked about, these 2 charts. Now sine was positive. Sine x was 0.5, that's a positive number. So we then look to see, well, where is sine positive? Sine is positive in quadrant 1, and it's in quadrant 2. So we've got answers in quadrant 1, and I've got an answer in quadrant 2. Now, how do we find these answers? We then think of the second chart, and the second chart tells me in quadrant 1, it's the acute angle. That's what I found there, so it's 30 degrees. In quadrant 2, to get my answer, I've got to do 180 minus the acute angle. So it's 180 degrees minus 30 degrees, which is equal to 150 degrees. Now you must always list down your answers at the end. So x is equal to either 30 degrees or 150 degrees, and double underline your answers. The next trig equation, we're going to solve 3 tan x is equal to minus 5. Now I need to find out what tan x is. So this thing here, that means 3 multiplied by tan x. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I've got to divide both sides by 3. So when I divide the left-hand side by 3, I'm left with tan x. And when I divide the right-hand side by 3, I've got minus 5 divided by 3. We now then want to find the acute angle. So to find the acute angle, we'll look and we say we're going to shift this tan away, but I never put a negative sign in. So I'm going to shift tan, which is tan to minus 1, of 5 divided by 3. Now, if you put in 5 divided by 3 into your calculator, do not round it. Keep that as a full number, and then you will get an accurate answer. That then turns out to be 59.0 degrees. So to the nearest degree, it is going to be 59 degrees. We now then want to find out where our answers are. So I'm going up here to find tan. So tan x is minus 5 over 3. So where is tan negative? I tend to look and say, well, where is tan positive? So tan's positive in there, and tan is positive in there. So it's in the other two quadrants. So it's got to be negative in quadrant 2 and in quadrant 4. Now we think about how we get into these two quadrants. So quadrant 2, back to this diagram, so quadrant 2 is 180 degrees minus the acute angle. So that will be 180 degrees minus 59, and that will turn out to be 121. And quadrant 4 is 360 minus acute angle, which is 59 degrees, and that one will turn out to be 301 degrees. So again, write down your answer. X is equal to 121 degrees and 301 degrees. I'm going to go back over that again. Okay, so what we've got here is we divide by 3, so we end up with tan x is negative. Now we ignore that negative sign just now, so we do a shift tan of 5 divided by 3. Don't ever put a negative answer into that calculator looking for an acute angle. So that gives us 59 degrees. Now that negative sign is really then just used to find out which quadrants our answers are in. And our answers where tan is negative, so I know that they're all positive in there and tan is positive in there. So it's got to be negative in the other two, which is 2 and 4. Now, when you're writing down your two answers, make sure you list them, because the acute angle is not one of the answers, because we do not have an answer in quadrant 1. So our two answers have got to be written down clearly and underlined at the end. Now for this one, what we've got is we have got 2 tan x minus 4 is equal to 8. We've got to unravel this equation until we get tan x equal to a number. So I'm going to say it again, 2 tan x minus 4 is equal to 8. The last thing I said there was that minus 4. So to undo, I take away 4, I add 4 onto both sides. So when I do that, I get 2 tan x is equal to 8 plus 4 is 12. Now that means 2 multiplied by tan x. So the opposite is to divide both sides by 2. So when I divide that side by 2, I end up with tan x. And when I divide this side by 2, 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now we're going to work out the acute angle. So the acute angle is shift tan. So shift that tan away. So shift tan of 6. And make sure again your calculator is in degree mode. And when you work that out, you get 80.5 degrees. Okay. If we're writing it to the nearest degree, then we'll just say it is 81 degrees. Now, I look to find out where this tan x is. There it's there. Tan x is plus 6, so it's positive. So where is tan positive? Up to this wee think bubble. Tan is positive in quadrant 1 because they're all positive in there, and it's positive in quadrant 3. So that means I've got two answers. One answer in quadrant 1 and one answer in quadrant 3. Now, quadrant 1 is the easy one. Quadrant 1 is the acute angle, which in this case is 81 degrees. And in quadrant 3 is 180 plus. So it's 180 degrees plus 81 degrees. And that gives me an answer of 261 degrees. So write down your two answers. So x is equal to, put them in a wee bracket, 81 degrees and 261 degrees. The next equation is 6 cos x minus 4 is equal to minus 1. So 6 cos x minus 4, the last thing I've said is take away 4. So to undo that, I add 4 onto both sides. And when I add 4 onto both sides, I end up with 6 cos x is equal to minus 1 plus 4 is 3. Now that means 6 multiplied by cos x, so to undo 6 times, I divide by 6. So cos x is equal to 3 divided by 6, and 3 divided by 6 is a half, or 0.5. Now we want to work out what the acute angle is. So acute angle is equal to shift cos, so cos to the minus 1 of 0.5. And when I do that, I get an angle of 60 degrees. So the acute angle is equal to 60. So next thing I've got to do is I've got to think where or which quadrants is my answer in. So I'll go back to cos x. Cos x was plus 0.5. Where is cos positive? Cos is positive in that one there, where they're all positive, and it's also positive in quadrant 4. So my two answers lie in quadrant 1 and in quadrant 4. Now we'll look at the second bubble to find out quadrant 1. What is my answer in quadrant 1? Quadrant 1 answer is the acute angle, so that's easy. It's just the 60 degrees that we've calculated. So that's 60 degrees. In quadrant 4, it's 360 minus the acute angle. So it's 360 minus 60 degrees, which turns out to be 300 degrees. So x is equal to 60 degrees and 300 degrees. Now, there are other trig equations that we've got to think about, and that is the ones where we end up with sine x or cos x equal to 0, 1 or minus 1. Those are special trig equations, and I'll do a wee video on them later.